Hey YouTube, this is Jack. I'm starting a new channel devoted to the paranormal and all its aspects. We're talking UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts. What the hell are those things? What are they doing? Do they exist? If they exist, how do they relate to each other? I want to know. I hope you do too. Alright, I'm going to read an article and go over it with you. This hopefully will be interesting. I haven't read it yet. Let's see. This is about a UFO abduction at a nuclear missile site. Now that's one interesting thing about the aliens, or whatever they are, whatever is in the UFOs. They seem to be very interested in our nuclear facilities and also our nuclear powered ships like aircraft carriers. You know, the famous Nimitz incident happened around a nuclear powered aircraft carrier. How much of their interest is in nuclear stuff? Are they interested in the aircraft carrier itself, the Nimitz group, the Navy, what the Navy is doing? Or are they really just interested in our nukes? Because they are definitely interested in our nukes. Okay, here we go. Here's the article from UFOchronicles.com. This is from 2017, but it seemed like a kind of a juicy article. Okay, over the past 44 years, I have interviewed more than 160 U.S. military veterans regarding their involvement in nuclear weapons-related UFO incidences. For an overview of their testimony, please view CNN's live stream coverage. I don't recommend that. Declassified documents relating to some of these incidents are also available. Many of the cases occurred at the Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile sites during the Cold War era. Of course, if the aliens were interested in our nukes, they would definitely be all over the Cold War. So that makes perfect sense to me. And usually upon arriving at the LF, commonly known as a silo, the SAT team would observe a UFO silently hovering directly over the site at low altitude. Usually. So this happened frequently enough to where he's applying the word usually. That's interesting. Depending on the case, the aerial object was described as disc-shaped or spherical or triangular or cylindrical-shaped craft. After a few seconds, the craft would leave the vicinity, typically at high speed. On occasion, as revealed by former missile maintenance personnel, the functionality of the ICBM would be disrupted during the incident, whether deliberately or inadvertently, requiring lengthy repairs. Okay, so the aliens have been messing with our stuff. They don't just appear at the silos, but they actually mess with the silos and with the missiles. There was an interesting incident that happened in Russia, I suppose back during the Soviet Union days, where the aliens actually triggered the countdown that would launch the missiles and then stopped it at the last second, right before the nuclear missile was launched at the U.S. So they seem to have been messing with the Soviet workers at the facility, the soldiers, trying to freak them out and scare them potentially into not using the nukes. But that is very alarming and frightening. If we see that as an example of aliens' sense of humor, for example, that is very worrying. Is that what was going on, or were they trying to frighten us, humans, into not nuking ourselves? So it could be sinister, it could be, a good thing. We don't know. But it's something to keep an eye on with the phenomenon. In every case reported to me over the years, the SAT team members were debriefed upon returning to base and sternly warned never to discuss the incident. I bet they were. Sometimes they were required to sign national security non-disclosure forms which stipulated severe legal penalties. Yeah. Recently, one such case was brought to my attention, which appears to be far more dramatic. This must be the UFO abduction at a nuclear facility. Okay, this is where it's hopefully going to get juicy. Indeed, based on the available information, it seems probable that the SAT team members were actually abducted by those aboard the UFO and transported along with their vehicle to a location some 5 miles away, where they were eventually discovered by other Air Force security teams. And it's interesting that the Air Force is such a part of UFO lore. The UFOs are very interested in the Navy, in particular the aircraft carriers, but the Air Force seems to have more direct involvement as far as, reproduction alien vehicles, reverse engineering technology, Area 51, all of that stuff seems to be Air Force centric, and they seem to be a driving force in the government in the Richard Dolan's so-called breakaway civilization. Which is to say, a group within the government that is doing its own thing in relating to UFOs and aliens or whatever they are. We don't know what is in the UFOs, only that they are not us. Typically. Some of them seem to be us, which is interesting. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Here's the written summary of the incident. This happened in 1977 in November. While assigned to the November Flight Launch Control, I was a security alert team member to the night shift who outranked me, blah, blah, blah. While at the LCF, I walked outside several times to stretch my legs, have a cigarette, and look at the stars. Man, I miss smoking. On one occasion, I really didn't look at the time, but I'm guessing it was around midnight. I noticed a very bright star that I had not seen before. I first thought it was a large helicopter or a B-52 bomber flying one of the low-altitude sorties. That is it sorties or sorties? I'm going to say sorties. They sometimes did out on the prairies, but it was not. It was hovering at about 30 degrees above the horizon. The way it shimmered and pulsated led me to continue to watch it for some time, say 20 minutes. I eventually walked back inside the LCF and made a comment about it to Sergeant whoever. And he laughed and said, "Sure, whatever that meant." Then I told other people. After 30 minutes, he went outside. I thought, okay, it was a plane or a helicopter. But as soon as I said that to myself, it lit up again. Not quite in the same place, but at the same elevation and more north. So instead of being due east of my location, it was more northeast. I thought for a minute and all of a sudden got the idea to flash the facility lights off and on as a signal. Why, I don't know. I guess that's what is done at sea from ship to ship. My father was a merchant seaman and I had sailed with him in my youth. So anyway, and that's interesting. That ties in with the Stephen Greer CE5 stuff where they flash, pins, light pins at the sky to communicate with them and possibly to get abducted or encounter them. And I've heard of one case that didn't go so well for the guy that did that. But others probably have had really positive, amazing encounters. That seems to be true. Whatever else I think of Stephen Greer. Yeah, I've got opinions about Stephen Greer. Let's see. I was not following any particular sequence like an SOS. My partner got curious, and after he had flashed the light 6 to 8 times, walked outside together to look at the object. Okay, interesting. So it continues. We didn't inform anyone about that on the radio, to the best of my knowledge, but I continued to view the object. As we approached Newell, we made a right turn onto the road that led to November 5. As we did, we immediately saw the object hovering directly over the site. It made no noise and was a huge glowing reddish-orange sphere. It was only 15 to 20 feet above the ground, and it was roughly the width of a Walmart building. I've thought a lot about its size, and I think that estimate is fairly accurate. It was enormous. A UFO as big as a Walmart near a U.S. nuclear facility. It's of course, in some ways it almost doesn't matter how big they are. The abilities these things possess is so big and so powerful. What does a little bit more matter, really? but still, that's impressive. Its surface was shimmering with the red and orange colors constantly swirling and churning. When I recently watched your documentary film, I don't know what he's referring to, there's one scene where a computer-generated image of a UFO is hovering over the front gate of an LFC, and its colors are swirling around. What we saw looked just like that. We stopped the vehicle and sat some distance from the security gate. There was no radio communication, as neither of us really knew what to do. I stared at it, couldn't breathe, felt like pressure on his chest. I could not figure out what was happening. I carried a 3D cell mag light. Okay, so is he going to signal it again? Yeah, it has his weapon. Alright, I'm skimming a little bit. Okay, skimming a little bit. Then it hit me like a chunk of lead. I never went on to the November 5 site. I didn't understand why at that moment, but I was certain that we never got past the LF security gate. Because he was still just staring into space, I moved over to the guy, to the passenger seat. He was not a large man, and I was in good shape. We maintained security checks for the entire ride back. The flight chief met us at the facility for a debrief. The sergeant that was with him was in a pitiful condition, and I later heard that he couldn't tell them anything, that he made no sense at all. He was removed from the control and assigned to base duty for some time. Me, however, I remembered everything up to hearing voices and blacking out, and everything after coming to and standing in the mud. Everything, the craft, the suffocating atmosphere, flashing lights of the object, not going onto the site, and yes, thinking only minutes had passed from first seeing this thing to being somewhere else. During the debriefing, I was told that nearly 4 hours had passed. One more thing, I have 2 small puncture marks on my skin that I can't explain. They're identical, a perfectly round depression with a raised dimple in the center. One is under my left armpit and the other is on my left foot, above the ankle. I don't remember any time or situation when I could have gotten them. Woods subsequently sent me photos of these marks. Interesting. So yeah, that's one thing that alien abductees commonly have, often have, is marks on their skin, often implants. Freaky stuff. After a few weeks, I was removed from November Control and reassigned to another place in South Dakota. I had the sense that I could pick that object out of the sky, find it among the stars, even at Kilo. It made no difference where it was, but I never saw it close up again. But it was not out there visiting all of our bases. We heard stories about other flights seeing things near the LFs on many occasions. The sergeant was transferred somewhere else a month or so after the incident. I found out somehow I remained at Kilo Command, working with a different guy as a SAT team member, then leader. Later, when Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, the mailbox scene freaked me out so badly that I had to get up and walk out of the theater. Interesting. Oh yeah, so it says that he plans to undergo hypnosis, regression therapy, which is controversial, but it has yielded a lot of results. And thousands of supposed abductees have been hypnotized and regressed and been able to relate their experiences. And there are broad commonalities in what they say, and some very disturbing things as well. So because of the commonalities, which were not widely known at the time that this began, it seems to be some underlying basis of truth to what they're saying. Now, hypnosis can create false memories. If anybody's seen the TV show Hellier, which I'm a big fan of, there's one point in, I think, season 2 where they show a gentleman undergoing hypnosis and inventing a UFO abduction scenario, just creating it out of whole cloth, even down to small details. So it is completely possible to create a memory with hypnosis. But at the same time, it also seems like a lot of these cases are real and legitimate. and there's independent corroboration for a lot of it. Other people saw them abducted, and so on. So I tend to believe in alien abduction. I've done a lot of research on it. It's actually pretty disturbing, some of the things that are said to be going on, and some differences in opinion, and also differences in the research that has been done and what has been determined from that research. Different researchers have come to different conclusions, and I find that very interesting. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed going through that article with me, and that you will join me again in the future for more content. I am interested in exploring UFOs and other aspects of the paranormal, ghosts, cryptids, you name it. So if you're interested in those things too, please like and subscribe. Talk me up on social media. Comment below. I would love to know what you think about this article. A guy gets abducted at a U.S. nuclear missile silo. That's a big deal. I've heard a lot about the UFOs actually at the silos, but abducting people, that's huge. And it's also really interesting if this is a one-time abduction, because that really begs some questions. You know, in most abduction cases, it's an ongoing situation. This person is abducted throughout the course of their lives many times, and often their parents and grandparents will have been abducted too, and their children will also be abducted. It's a generational thing. The aliens seemingly doing something to our genetics over the course of generations. So if that's true, then why is this guy abducted only one time? Does that mean the aliens were trying to find out something specific about the nuclear weapons that only he could tell them? What could he tell them that they could not have found out themselves? That is very intriguing, and I want to know the answer. If you want to know, like and subscribe, comment below, let me know what you think is going on. All right, until next time, talk to you later.